morning, good afternoon. Delighted that you could join us today for this panel. I am extremely delighted to be joined by two of what I consider to be the best PPP experts, not only in the region, but in the world. They have many years of experience. They have seen all kinds of projects in all kinds of sectors. So it is really a delight to be speaking with Atter, Hannoura, and Mahmoud Khoshman today. Our topic is water, but I think we will also manage to talk about electricity because, of course, all these sectors are interrelated. Water in the Middle East is scarce. This is, common knowledge and no surprise. It is getting even scarcer by the day with the effects of climate change. It is estimated that by 2050, the Middle East water supply would have decreased by about a third. Demand is growing at the same time. Population is the second highest growth rate in the world behind sub-Saharan Africa at 1.7% a year. So there is no decline in demand at this point in time. Agriculture in the region uses 84% of the available water. That is a huge percentage, but agriculture everywhere in the world uses a lot more water than other uses. The thing that is critical in the MENA region is that the average efficiency of the use of water for irrigation is 50 to 60% compared to about 80% in similar regions that are arid, like southwestern US or Western Australia, in other parts of the world. So there is no infrastructure, really, at this point in time, there's a lot to be done to improve the efficiency of water for irrigation in the region. This is causing, this decrease in supply and increase in demand is causing the water table to go deeper and deeper in many parts of the region. And therefore, the region is increasingly dependent on desalination. And it has invested billions of dollars in the past in MSF, in multi-stage flash desalination. Now we are realizing that with the carbon footprint of that and the inefficiency of using power plants for generating fresh water, if they're not running at full capacity, that this is not a solution that can be continued to be depended on. So new projects have to be implemented that use reverse osmosis, which reduces the power supply needed to generate a cubic meter of water by about a ratio of 1 to 10, so 1/10 of the cost of MSF. And the region is inefficient in the reuse of gray water. A lot needs to be also invested in projects that use that. So all of these things, that is also affecting the environment. So the link between water, power, agriculture, the environment is there. It's been talked about. We all know that this is essential, and yet in governments, not only in the region, but many parts of the world, still have the power supply policy within the Ministry of Energy, the water within the Ministry of Water, or agriculture within the Ministry of Agriculture. And there's very little coordination going on in most countries to streamline decision-making and policy-making in order to bring these elements together under the umbrella of the SDGs. And we at WAPP always speak about the SDGs, their extreme relevance to successful PPPs, to good coordination, etc. So this is the background of the context that we're in. I would only add that municipal water uses only about 9% of water resources, but causes a lot of the polemic around PPPs in water. Many people think that water is a gift of God; it should be given to them for free, and unfortunately, getting people to understand that what they're paying for is not the water; they're paying for the cost of extracting it, of purifying it, of transporting it, is something that in our region is still not widely understood. This is the background of the context. I'm delighted to again welcome my two panelists. I'll start with Dr. Hannoura, and maybe, or if you don't mind, maybe if you allow me, let me switch and start with Mr. Khoshman. Mahmoud, your views on the policy overall in the region, and especially as it relates to this confluence of the various sectors, how they come together and how they should work.
Thank you, Ziad. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. Thanks to MEED for allowing this opportunity. As you rightfully said, Ziad, the region water issues is the key. Is basically, we've been reading in the political literature that the next war in the region is a water war, and water is becoming so much a play in the political economy in the region. Now, as you said, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Water in every country. I can assure you there is very little coordination between what they do. Today, for example, if you look at Jordan debt burden, you will find that the water sector and the energy sector, they are responsible for over 60% of Jordan debt burden. While logically, being a commodity for societies, they should be at least cost recovery here. And this is not happening. Today, Jordan is embarking on a policy to desalinate water for the first time. That's why one of the key projects coming in Jordan now, and it's the only project that is going on, is the national carrier and the water desalination, which is basically the very little water we have is not enough anymore. Climate change is adding insult to injury. Aqaba is 350 kilometers south of the population center in Jordan. You have to desalinate that distance and then carry the water and pump it from 0 level to 1,000 meter above sea level. So you just can imagine what the cost would be. But when it comes to water, the matter doesn't come only economics, it's life or death. So in addition to this project in Jordan, I do believe, and I'm a big advocate for small solutions. In Jordan, we have lots of brackish water, and I'm sure every country has a lot of brackish water. Today, with renewable energy becoming that cheap, especially solar PV, we can easily have a distributed system of on-site desalination of brackish water and then transporting it to the next or closest urban center or human settlement. So the other area which we should look at is reuse wastewater treatment, basically reuse treated water. Today, with every 1,000 liter of water goes in the house, on average, 60% of it goes out of the treatment plant after being treated. And that in certain countries, substantial quantity. Today, if we design a model whereby we take the secondary treated water and offer small PPPs for tertiary treatment, and then basically purification to, I don't want to say in this region to drinking level, but to a safe level, whereby it will be used in efficient agriculture. So today, we should focus on what we call the WEF nexus, water, energy, food, whereby we harness the cheap renewable energy to manage our scarce water resources in order to make them available to produce with them maximum agriculture product. Here, basically, this nexus is touching upon the very three critical security issue in the region: water security, food security, and energy security. So basically, today we should start thinking about what we call it, if we want to follow the trend today, META. It's the META PPP. Let us look at what after the PPP, how we can deploy PPP in resolving our day-to-day life by customizing this huge knowledge we acquire in a couple of decades and putting it into implementable, bankable contracts. So the answer for the region is WEF nexus. And that's what basically we should keep advocating going forward. And in the same time, they achieve your dear SDG 17s in the perfect way. And I do believe brackish water desalination, tertiary treatment of treated wastewater would be cheaper than desalinating and transporting waters for a long distance. Over to you, Ziad.
Thank you very much. These are very important comments, Mahmoud. I think interesting that it seems that smaller scale PPPs are going to be very important in all sectors, not only in education for schools or hospitals, social infrastructure PPPs, but also distributed energy generations through smaller solar power installations. I wouldn't even call them plants. They might be installations for remote areas, and you're bringing up something very interesting: the use of that energy for water, for treating brackish water, and for even dealing with gray water. So this is very, very interesting. Atter, over to you for some comments on that topic.
Thank you, Ziad. Thank you for me to having this opportunity. Actually, the topic that we're discussing now is one of the top issues and top challenges for any government, for any country. The water scarcity, as you mentioned, and Mahmoud elaborated on it, is the coming challenge. Actually, is the current challenge, let me say. In Egypt, we changed a little bit on these policies. Instead of using the water coming from the Nile, as it is not enough anymore, water scarcity. Egypt now is one of the countries that's falling in the water scarcity. The new policies have been taken care of. One of the main pillars of this new policy for water is the desalination. As the population is expanding in Egypt, as you know, we're almost 105 million, and the new urban developments are spreading. Actually, the new urban developments are spreading apart from the Nile area, and they are spreading over the shores. And as you know, that Egypt is having almost 2,000 kilometers of shores, the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the new urban developments are spreading there. We have a lot of infrastructure made for this new urban development, new cities, like roads and transportation and all other facilities. However, still the water is the most challenging part. The solution was the desalination. Actually, we didn't enter into the desalination in Egypt because of the Nile water from the Nile availability, which is much more cheaper to purify than desalination. But given that we have the water scarcity now, and the spread of the new urban developments, so the desalination is the solution. Other solution or other policy was shifting the irrigation systems that we used to have for decades and actually for centuries. We are shifting, and the government is spending a lot of money in this direction in subsidizing the new irrigation system from dripping irrigation or pivots or similar systems, rather than the old irrigation system. Actually, this is to better economically using the water in the irrigation system. In Egypt, we use almost 14% to 15% of the water Nile, the water coming from the Nile, in the domestic uses, and 85% or 86% are for irrigation. Now we're spreading in the agriculture, so the water should be economically used accordingly. The coating for the streams and for the water tunnels been done and new irrigation systems in the domestic side. As Ziad mentioned, we are in Egypt already. We have a plan from 2021 till 2050 for a desalination system.
Yes, Atter, let's talk about your projects. That'd be very interesting. What you have in your pipeline in that sense?
In the pipeline, in the water sector, we have the plan that I've just mentioned for the wastewater, for the desalination. We have 6.5 million cubic meter per day to be implemented over the next 30 years. And this plan has been broken to 6 5-year plan till 21 to 2025, 2030, and so on. The first plan that we're working on now, we have 17 projects. The 17 projects are not all of them big sites, some of which, due to the distribution, as Ziad mentioned this morning, some of which are very small, like 5,000 cubic meter per day or 10,000 cubic meter per day, some of which are the average of 60,000 to 80,000, and we have from 150 to 200,000 cubic meter per day. And we've got in this 17, we've got two, let me say, we call it big or huge systems, huge plants, which is almost 850,000 cubic meters per day. But this will be only in an area serving big cities like Alexandria, for instance. We have 150.
Over the next 6 months or so, what RFPs might be expected by investors and
for in the water sector?
In the water sector, yeah.
Yes, in the water sector, we have 4 ready to be tendered. The only thing that we're checking the lands and checking the how suitable the seafront side from the for the projects, and there are mid-size, 3 of which are around 440,000 cubic meter per day, and one big one, it's 200. Actually, it's 190,000 cubic meter per day. And the small ones that I mentioned, that the other are in the Red Sea. The big one is a city called El Hammam in the north coast. That's the 4 that we are will be tendering in the next 4 to 6 months. In the water sector, also we have wastewater treatment plants. As mentioned, as one of the policies is to go for a tertiary now. We don't have the luxury for going for the primary or the secondary treatment. We're hitting almost the tertiary for reusing this water or the treated water in irrigation. We have one in Helwan and another one in Dumyat, and these will be announced within the next 3 months. We're doing the technical studies. It's worth mentioning here that also in change of policies, that we are not depending 100% on the traditional electricity power system. We have to use the renewable energy for more than one reason. Now the renewable energies have been dropped down, especially the solar energy, given that Egypt is enjoying high flux of rays from the sun, and the solar energy is very efficient there. So the 1 kilowatt hour is almost costing less than 2 cents. So, and given that the cost of 1 cubic meter is almost 30%, of which 30 to 34% is power cost, so significantly this might affect the challenge in the using the solar energy. Number one, the land, because solar energy, you need wide land, and you can put it.
You have a lot of that in Egypt.
Pardon? I don't have a problem with this, but the problem that we always face is the lands at the seaside, at the seafront, for the desalination point. However, in the depth of the inland, depth of the desert, we can put the solar farms, and connection through the grid is not a big problem. However, the main challenge in such a project in a PPP is the increase of the capex. Capex plus the cost of the station, of the plant, desalination plant, you will having almost doubling, if not more, worth of capex, which is another challenge for the project. We're doing some studies now on that, and as I mentioned to you earlier, that this study would be out in the next 2 months, and I'll put the entire study at the WAPPP to be available to everybody, because we are checking the economic side, how this would affect directly or indirectly the cost of the cubic meter of desalinated water, given the cost of the land, cost of the transmission, the capex and the return on equities, and the lenders. We're checking this again from the lender's point of view, from the lender's side, because big tickets is always appreciated by the lenders, but up to an extent.
Yeah,
bigger tickets are always questionable sometimes. So we're checking all this and how can we manage it, and once we get it, I'll put it at the one.
Thank you very much, Atter. I'll go to Mahmoud. Mahmoud, about projects in Jordan or in other parts of the region. I mean, you're an advisor to the World Bank, and I'm sure you're looking at projects in the region as a whole as well. So what do you see in the pipeline for water at this point in time?
Thank you, Ziad. Well, basically, the flagship projects in Jordan is the National Water Carrier and Desalination. It's a 300 million cubic meter per year, and doing the math is over 900,000 cubic meter per day, this project in Aqaba. There are still some issues related to environmental impact of the project because of the returned brine. There are some solution coming forward saying that we're going to take the brine and then we're going to put in the desert solar drying bonds, basically for the purpose of converting that into salt and using the salt. So this project is close to $3 billion in cost. They have qualified 5 consortia and companies. They are the big boys in the field. So the minister recently mentioned that they are going to basically release the RFP very soon. There is, as a standard PPP, there is one issue with this project, that it's led by an engineering firm. And we all know that PPPs are financial transactions, and they should be led by financial advisors and transaction advisors. So I think that as we speak, they are rectifying that by basically getting top-notch financial advisors on the job in order to put forward the financial analysis for the various scenarios and various basically looking at the financing. There will be a need for a kind of a viability gap funding, possibly through grants by leading donors to Jordan in order to lower the cost of a cubic meter. In terms of the region, Sudan is recently embarking on a very ambitious, basically PPP program, whereby managing water from the Nile and directing it towards efficient agri-project is on the table. Still in the very early stage of mining or generating the pipeline of projects. Other parts of the region, Morocco, as we know, it has a big water project, is multi-stage canal project for irrigation, SAIS, and I do believe this is going fine as we speak. But once again, I want to basically visit the importance of the WAPPP nexus for Jordan. Here today, maybe I want to focus more in solution for Jordan. And I want to basically, as maybe in the previous MEED conference, I was calling upon all the practitioners and professionals to come forward and craft solutions for smaller PPPs that resolve smaller issues. Municipal PPPs, water within municipalities, waste to energy within municipalities and cities. Jordan, because of its geography, it has the western side is the Rift Valley, and the Rift Valley extends over around close to 500 kilometers from the borders with Syria all the way to the Red Sea. And on the east side, you have the basically Badia Plateau, it's called. In fact, all the rain in Jordan comes on this mountain range, and maybe 2/3 of it flow westward towards the Rift Valley, and maybe 1/3 flows eastward. Now, over decades and centuries, lots of as this catchment area, a lot of rainwater has been basically infiltrating into groundwater, and because of salinity, there is a salinity wash in the way, so it becomes a brackish. We talk about a brackish is 3,000 to 4,000 parts per million salt. Another cause of a brackish is basically overexploitation of existing aquifers. So they are no longer basically suitable for direct drinking. So today, if we deploy solar energy into desalinating brackish water, we can generate a pipeline of at least 50 projects in Jordan.
Understood.
But that's need one thing. That needs a very clear policy by the government that we want to go that route.
Let's hope they adopt it. We have about 15 minutes left, and like to open the floor for questions from the audience. I have some questions from Richard Thompson. Thank you very much, Richard. Richard's asking about whether if you see any impact of inflation, concern about higher interest rates affected by higher inflation, and what that might do to the cost of projects and interest of investors and availability of financing for projects in the region. So, Atter, what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, this is a coming issue. The inflation, the global inflation, we're waiting for it. However, the availability of financing, I believe it will be always available, especially when the project is structured in a bankable way and the contract is a balanced contract following the standards. I think that always will be having financing available. Actually, we managed to close some deals during the revolution. So, but the project, was well structured, and the contract was balanced, so it always attracting the private sector. However, the cost was a little bit high due to the risks. There is more than one system to manage the expected increase in the interest rate, especially when the country is paying with a local currency. This is always the challenge. If you're paying with the euros or the dollars or whatever, so the risk must be a little bit less. And because the problem of the long tenor that might not be available in all countries in the region, so we have to do another parallel system. So we have to revisit the increase of the interest rate every period of time. And during the revolution or pre-revolution, we have the tenors was maximum in Egypt was maximum 7 years. In very rare circumstances, it jumps to 10 years. In a PP project, when it's 30 years or 25 years, you leave some tail period, and then you require something like 15 to 18 years tenor for the project. So we managed to do this by linking the interest rate to the CDs. And we revisit, we call the banks or ask the banks during their financial agreement, the financial closure, to fix the rate for a period of 7 years or 5 years, the longest tenor that they can do, as the CDs, available CDs at this time. Okay. And after the lapse of this period, we revisit the interest rate again, and either we increase it if it's increased, or decrease it, as happened in the last 4 years, was decreased. So either we increase it and the tariff is higher, or we decrease it and the tariff is changed accordingly. So this is one of the solutions that we dealt with to overcome the expected inflation, especially in the interest rates.
Indeed, there are many ways. When you what I notice in our region is that usually there isn't enough financial creativity in putting together structures for projects. Many countries, certainly the non-oil producing countries, they're typically waiting for the World Bank or some other multilateral financing, and it's very basic. And even in the oil producing countries, there is usually just one or two alternatives that are thought about. I go back to Latin America, where I worked for many years, and it is amazing how many different structures and how much creativity there was in every case. So I hope that we will get more investment bankers involved in PPP in the region, as Mahmoud was saying. I mean, that needs governments to think of financial advisors, not just as transaction advisors, which there are many, but go to the real investment banks and look for real financial solutions. Mahmoud, your thoughts about this, and also the question for you regarding whether it would be could be enough interest in small projects, or whether this needs to be bundled in larger projects to be able to attract investor interest.
Well, look, inflation is coming, as Atter said, because simply the central banks and the government, they added close to $10 trillion in the market, which means that basically we do the math and you get the figure. Also, supply chain and surge in energy cost will add more problems in terms of adding to the costs. And we see the cost of basic material is going up because of that. So yes, we are going to see inflation, and I hope in some country will not be an inflationary recession, which basically that would be a killer. So for PPPs, I'm traditionally a big advocate for Islamic finance in PPP, and I do believe that class of finance is hugely underutilized, as the Islamic assets are rising on double digit on annual basis. They need to be deployed. And here, basically, we need to look how we can structure PPP-friendly Islamic financing solution. And in fact, the Islamic Development Bank with the World Bank, they have worked in the past few years, and they have issued a 2-volume, basically, guideline for how we can deploy. Unfortunately, lots of this good work basically doesn't go beyond certain people interest.
We're losing you, Mahmoud. Yeah, we lost you there for a minute.
I'm back.
Could you?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm saying we should basically, a lot of great work has been done by the multilateral financing institution. And let us basically here also highlight one important thing. The Middle East and North Africa is split almost 2 halves. One half is bankable by mainstream banking industry because they are investment grade. And the rest are sub-investment grade, and they have no option but to go for multilaterals, bilaterals, and ECAs. And those are available. So I agree with Atter 100% that we don't have an issue with availability of debt for PPPs. We have an issue of preparing PPP to meet the criteria of the debt providers in order the issue of currency, the issue of basically you need to hedge currency and you need to hedge inflation. Now, if you hedge them all together, the cost of financing will basically shoot up big time. And here you don't want that to happen. That's why sometimes you need to be creative in having a 2-stair financing structure. And that's basically needed. Now, the ecosystem for PPP need to be given more attention in the region. The financing community with the governments and the government leaders and the business leader and the leading developers need to come together. And maybe that's a topic for me to look at. Come together, maybe the World Bank, maybe a big institution. The need is there. The money is there. How we can basically structure the solution to basically suit every project. Now, for a small project, you have 2 options. Either you offer them to local developers, because unfortunately in many countries, we ignore local developers. We ignore local business groups. We ignore local contractors with business groups, forming consortium to basically go. So again, there is a responsibility on the practitioners of PPP to go down and sit with the people, tell them, guys, this is not a rocket science. This is a very logical process. It's regulated by the government. It is structured this way. The banks understand it this way. And at the end of the day, if the beginning don't meet the ends, there is no project. And we have to make it basically attractive to the equity provider and to the debt provider at a reasonable cost. And in many countries whereby affordability is an issue, we have to provide viability gap financing. And a lot of these countries are recipients of international donors' money. And instead of keep repeating same programs by donors' money all over and again, direct them towards basically an impactful project. So today for me, if I have $50 million from a donor, I would put them as equity support to bridge the viability gap, rather than spend them on 1,000 workshops that basically means nothing. Honestly, we have an issue. We have an issue between how we can deploy resources in an efficient way.
You're absolutely right, Mahmoud. I share your opinion 100%. In our region, we have grown so used to large entities and coming in and doing big projects. And this has caused major economic imbalance in our economies. We have not been able to develop local capabilities, smaller entities that can grow and eventually become large. You look at some countries. I was in Kazakhstan recently, and they've done 600 projects, 600 PPP projects without any international financing. It's all local financing, but they're small projects. So, when you do local financing, you develop your own capital markets. You don't have to deal with the foreign exchange risk. You develop your own capabilities internally, even if it is not the most efficient cost-wise, but the benefits to the economy, there's a multiplier effect to the economy that should be taken into effect by policymakers and not just look at the cost of a project itself. Atter, some thoughts from your end?
Actually, the issues that was mentioned by Mahmoud regarding the inflation in these days, when we are waiting for the inflation, not the increase of interest, as I mentioned, the inflation, we put the inflation risk on the government, and we apply it on the OPEX part of the unitary payment. So we split them. We ask them in the sheets, the financial sheet that they provide in the bids, to split them in the OPEX and the CAPEX of the unitary payment in the project that are off-take projects, and we apply the inflation on the operational cost or on the OPEX portion of the payment, and we upgrade it. I mean, we visit it annually as it should be. So we remove it from the risk of the private sector, and we allocate this risk to the government, and that's much more efficient in the project. The last thing I wanted to mention here is the small project, PP project. Definitely, small PP projects will open the market for medium and size companies, which we want to increase in any country. However, the studies of the project and the preparation of the project would be a little bit significant portion of the cost of the project, and the cost of the transaction. This is the main challenge. I have 3 wastewater desalination projects, 20,000 cubic meter per day, 10,000 cubic meter per day, and 30,000 cubic meter per day. So each one of them is not an attractive ticket to the banks, and not attractive even to the big players of the desalination.
So you're going to bundle them together?
Actually, we bundle them together because they are geographically.
Okay.
It's 160 kilometers, 70 kilometers. We bundle them and studied together and went together.
Wonderful. I'm afraid we're out of time. I wanted to thank you very much, Atter, Mahmoud, for these enlightening comments. I wanted to thank Richard Thompson and MEED Group for always being there for the region, helping everybody, policymakers as well as companies, understand the complexities of the region from the economic side, from the financial side, from every sector side. So thank you very much, MEED, and I hope to see you in a future webinar sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.